The summoning. The night was silent, but John could feel something strange in the air. The stars above the alien world shimmered brighter than usual, as if the sky itself was waiting for something. He stood in the center of a vast courtyard, surrounded by thousands of alien eyes, their shapes tall, slim, and glowing with colors that looked unreal to a human. Every sound in the crowd hushed as a long horn blew, deep and heavy, the kind of sound that echoed inside the chest rather than the ear. John's heart beat faster. He had been told only hours ago that his presence was demanded here, yet no one explained why. Soldiers with shining armor had escorted him into this grand alien city, and though they did not hurt him, he knew he was not free. The buildings around him curved upward like spires of crystal, and the air carried a sweet but sharp scent, like flowers mixed with metal. It felt less like a city and more like the inside of a living dream. Then the queen appeared. She was taller than any of the others, her silver skin glowing faintly under the twin moons. Her robe was woven with threads of light, shifting colors as if alive. The aliens bowed low when she stepped forward, but John stood frozen, unable to decide if he should bow too. Her eyes, sharp and radiant, locked onto him with a weight that made his knees weak. "Tonight begins the season," she said in a voice that carried across the courtyard without need for speakers. "It is the time of choosing." Her words were translated into John's ear by the small device they had forced him to wear, but even without it, he felt the meaning in his bones. The crowd answered with a chant, their voices blending into a haunting rhythm that shook the air. John swallowed, his throat dry. He wanted to ask what any of this had to do with him, but fear held his tongue. The queen raised a crystal staff, and light burst upward into the sky, splitting into 1,000 shimmering sparks. They floated down like stars falling to the ground, circling around John. The aliens gasped, their glowing eyes widening, some even stepping back in awe. The queen's voice rose again, sharp and commanding. "The ritual has spoken. The choosing is clear." She pointed the staff at John, her silver face unreadable. "The human has been chosen." For a heartbeat, silence covered the courtyard. Then the crowd erupted into cheers, songs and strange cries. The sound was overwhelming, pressing on John from all sides. He shook his head, his mind spinning. Chosen? Chosen for what? He whispered under his breath. The aliens surged forward, but guards quickly held them back. Dozens of glowing hands reached toward him as if he was some holy object. John stumbled backward, his chest tight with panic. He had been through many strange things since being taken from Earth, but nothing like this. They did not look at him like a prisoner anymore. They looked at him like something far more dangerous or sacred. The queen stepped closer, her towering presence casting a shadow over him. "You are the one," she said, her voice softer now but filled with certainty. "The season demands it, and fate has decided. You will stand among us in the days of desire, and all shall compete for you." John's stomach turned. Compete for him? The meaning hit him slowly, piece by piece, until his blood ran cold. They didn't summon him for judgment or punishment. They had brought him here because he was the prize. The alien chant shifted, louder, faster, almost hungry. The air itself seemed to throb with their voices. John's breathing grew shallow, his hands trembling. He wanted to run, but the guards closed in around him, their spears glowing with light that hummed like electricity. He had nowhere to go, no one to call for help. The queen extended her hand, her silver eyes still locked on him. "Do not fear, human. This is an honor that only 1 in 1,000 lifetimes receives." Her words sounded gentle, but John could feel the chains hidden behind them. The aliens saw him as something precious, but not as a person. He was an object, a symbol, perhaps even a tool for something he did not yet understand. The chant reached its peak, the crowd swaying as if under one mind. John stood trapped in the center of it all, his name lost under the roar of alien voices. His heart pounded, louder and louder, until it drowned out the noise. The truth struck him like a hammer. He had not been brought here to witness their ritual. He was the ritual, and as the queen's smile curled faintly, and her people's voices filled the night, John realized something terrifying. This was only the beginning. The alien court. The gates of the palace opened with a sound like thunder rolling across the sky. John was pushed forward by the guards, their glowing spears humming softly as if warning him not to resist. The moment he stepped inside, he felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. The alien court stretched before him, pillars of crystal rising high like frozen lightning. walls that pulsed faintly as though alive, and a floor so polished it reflected him like a mirror. The crowd of nobles stood along the sides, tall and elegant, their faces painted in radiant colors that shifted as they breathed. Each alien wore robes laced with threads of light, and every one of them stared at John with the same unsettling mix of hunger and awe. Whispers filled the air, sharp and cold. Words he couldn't understand, but tones he felt too clearly. They spoke as if debating whether he was worthy, or whether he should even survive. At the far end of the hall, the queen sat upon a throne carved from a single piece of dark crystal. The throne itself seemed alive, glowing veins of light running through it like blood in a body. Her gaze pierced through the hall, pinning John in place before he even reached her. When the guards stopped, he stood alone in the center, the silence around him so heavy that his breath sounded like thunder. The queen raised her hand and the whispers fell silent at once. "Behold the human," she declared, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "He is the chosen, the desire of this season." Her words sent a shiver through the nobles. Some gasped, others clenched their fists in anger, and a few leaned forward with hunger burning in their eyes. John's fist tightened. He wanted to shout that he had not agreed to any of this, that he was no one's prize, but his voice caught in his throat. The queen rose slowly, her silver form glowing beneath the dim light. Each season the ritual selects one, and all may compete for their favor. This time it has chosen an outsider, a human. This is the will of fate. The nobles erupted into arguments, their voices sharp like blades. John could not understand their language, but the translator in his ear buzzed with frantic whispers. "He is unworthy," one shouted. "He is dangerous," another spat. But more voices rose with a different tone, heavy with greed and desire. "I will win him," one declared. "No, he will be mine," another growled. The air itself shook with the weight of their clashing wills. The queen slammed her staff against the crystal floor, and silence returned instantly. Her eyes flickered with cold fire as she looked at John. "You will be kept here, watched, guarded," she said. "Soon the trials will begin, and each will prove their worth before you. You will see their strength, their beauty, their devotion, and you must choose." John's heart sank. Choose? They wanted him to sit in judgment, to decide which alien among them would claim him as if he were some prize to be won. The idea twisted his stomach, but the weight in the queen's words told him this was not a request. Then from the edge of the hall, a soft voice broke through. "My queen," it said. John turned and saw her, different from the others. A woman draped in dark robes without glowing threads, her face bare of any paint, her eyes calm and shadowed. She did not bow. She did not tremble. She only stood still, watching John with an unreadable expression. Whispers rippled through the court, sharp and bitter. "Why is she here?" one hissed. "She has no right to speak," another sneered. The queen's gaze flicked toward the woman, sharp as a blade. "Silence," she said, her voice dangerously low, but John caught the momentary flicker in the queen's eyes. Was it anger or fear? The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile, and she whispered so quietly John barely heard it through the translator. "You do not belong here, human. Be careful. They do not seek love, only chains." Before he could respond, guards surrounded her, shoving her back into the shadows. John's chest tightened, his thoughts spinning. Why was she the only one who spoke to him like a person and not a prize? Why did her words feel like a warning wrapped in truth? The queen raised her staff again, her voice filling the hall. "The season has begun. The human will remain within these walls until the trials are complete. Let none forget. His choice will shape not only his fate, but the fate of us all." The nobles bowed, their glowing robes brushing the floor. But John felt the weight of chains settling around him. Invisible yet unbreakable, he was no longer just a prisoner. He was the center of their world, and the game they were about to play was far more dangerous than he could imagine. The contest of hearts, the palace transformed overnight. John awoke to the sound of drums echoing through the crystal walls. Each beat heavy, steady, like the rhythm of a giant's heart. The air carried a strange scent, sweet but burning at the edges, making his head feel light. When the guards opened his chamber, he saw the courtyard below filled with nobles, banners of light rising into the sky, and a vast circle cleared for what could only be one thing: competition. The queen stood upon her throne once more, her silver eyes shining. "The trials begin," she announced. "Each will show why they are worthy, and the human will watch. His eyes will be the mirror of truth, his heart the final judgment." John was led to a raised platform, forced to sit on a seat carved from glowing stone. It was beautiful but cold, pressing into his back as though reminding him that comfort was not allowed here. The nobles turned their eyes to him, and he felt the hunger in their gazes. Not hunger for food, but something darker, something he could not fully name. The first contestant stepped forward. She was tall and radiant, her skin glowing with golden fire, her arms like blades as she lifted twin spears of light. With a cry that shook the air, she spun them faster than human eyes could follow, her movements like a storm given form. The crowd roared with delight, and when she ended, her eyes locked on John, sharp and burning. "This strength," she said in a voice translated cold and clear, "will be yours if you choose me." John's stomach tightened. Was this a performance or a threat? Another stepped forward. This one cloaked in shimmering blue, she sang, her voice rising into the air like a river of light, and the walls themselves seemed to hum with her song. John felt his chest ache, his thoughts blur, as though the music reached into his soul and pulled. The crowd swayed with her voice, but when she finished, her smile carried the sharpness of a blade. "Your heart already beats with my song," she whispered. John shivered because for a moment, he almost believed it. One by one they came, each more extravagant than the last. Some shattered stone with their bare hands. Some created illusions of galaxies and storms. Others poured words of devotion so sweet they tasted like poison on his tongue. But all of them looked at him as if he were less a man and more a crown waiting to be claimed. And then, silence from the back of the circle. The figure in dark robes appeared again. The same woman who had dared to warn him in the court. Gasps spread through the nobles, their painted faces twisting in disgust. "She has no right," one hissed. "Outcast," another spat, but she ignored them, walking with quiet grace until she stood where the others had performed. She did not raise a weapon, did not sing, did not conjure light. She simply lifted her head and looked directly at John, her eyes calm, steady, unpainted. The silence stretched so long it felt like the air itself had frozen. Finally she spoke, her voice low but carrying across the court. "I will not fight for you," she said. "I will not sing or dance or destroy for your favor. Because you are not a prize, you are a person. And if no one else remembers that, then I will." The word struck him harder than any display of strength or beauty. For the first time, John's chest loosened, his breath coming easier. For the first time since the summoning, he felt seen. The court erupted in chaos, shouts of outrage filling the hall. "She insults the ritual," one roared. "Cast her out," another demanded. The queen rose slowly, her eyes flashing with fury. But John noticed something strange behind her anger. There was fear. Fear of the truth spoken aloud. Guards moved to seize the woman, but before they could, John rose to his feet without meaning to. The crowd gasped, all eyes locking onto him. He did not know what to say, but his silence alone was enough. The queen slammed her staff down, her voice cutting through the noise. "The trials continue," she barked. "The human will choose at the end, not before." The guards pulled the woman back. But her eyes never left John's, calm, steady, unshaken. And in that look, he felt both a warning and a promise. The drums resumed, the competitions continued. But John no longer saw them the same way. Every display of strength, beauty, or devotion looked hollow compared to the truth of a single voice. Yet he knew one thing clearly now. The choice they demanded from him was not a gift. It was a chain, and whichever hand he placed it in would decide not only his fate, but perhaps the fate of all humanity. And deep inside, a fire began to burn. For the first time, he wondered if he could turn this game against them. The forbidden truth, the night after the contests. John lay awake in the chamber they had given him. The walls glowed faintly like living crystal, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat, and every time he closed his eyes, he could still hear the alien chants echoing in his head. The strength, the beauty, the voices of desire, yet none of it mattered, because his thoughts were stuck on the woman in dark robes. Her words had cut through the noise like a blade of truth. "You are not a prize," she had said, and those words kept burning in his mind. Suddenly, the wall in front of him shifted, a crack opening silently. From the shadows, she emerged again. Her hood pulled low, her steps careful but fearless. John sat up quickly, his chest tight. "How did you—" "Quiet," she whispered, placing a finger to her lips. "If they know I am here, both of us will pay the price." She moved closer, her eyes sharp and calm. "You must understand what this really is," she said, her voice steady. "The ritual of choosing is not about love, or desire or honor, it is about survival." John frowned. his hands clenching on the bed. What do you mean? She looked at him with a mixture of pity and sorrow. Our people are fading. The rituals are not tradition. They are desperation. We need what only you can give. Not your heart. Not your devotion, but your blood. It carries strength that even we do not understand. The words hit him like thunder. His chest went cold, his breath short. They brought me here, not for choice, but for breeding, he whispered. Her silence was the only confirmation he needed. John shook his head, rage boiling under his skin. So that's it? I'm not a guest, not even a prisoner. I'm cattle to them. She lowered her gaze. To most of them. Yes, the weight of it crushed him. Every smile, every performance, every promise of devotion. It was all a mask. They didn't see him as human. They saw him as a vessel, a resource, a cure for their dying kind. Why are you telling me this? He asked, his voice raw. She stepped closer, her eyes burning with something fierce. Because not all of us agree. Because if you refuse, they will not hesitate to break your world to take what they want. They will burn Earth if that is the price, and her voice broke for the first time. I cannot let that happen. His heart pounded like war drums. The image of Earth under alien fire flashed in his mind. Cities turned to ash, people screaming, the sky burning red. He clenched his fists, his jaw tight. I won't let them touch my world, he said. His voice low, she studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then you must be clever. Play their game until the moment you can turn it against them. Only then will you survive. Only then will your world survive. Before he could answer, the sound of footsteps thundered in the hall. The walls shook as guards approached, their spears glowing brighter. The woman's eyes widened, but her calm returned instantly. They know I am here. You must choose your next steps carefully. Human, she whispered, and before the door burst open, she slipped back into the shadows, vanishing as if swallowed by the walls themselves. The guards stormed in, their glowing eyes scanning the chamber. John forced himself to stay calm, to keep his face blank. Juan stepped forward, his voice cold. The Queen demands your presence. John nodded slowly, standing tall, hiding the storm boiling inside him. As they marched him through the palace halls, the truth pressed heavy in his chest. He was not chosen for honor, not chosen for desire. He was chosen because humanity carried something the aliens could not create. And now, the fate of two worlds sat on his shoulders. When the great doors of the throne room opened again, the Queen stood waiting, her silver face unreadable. The nobles lined the hall, their painted faces glowing under the crystal light. The Queen raised her staff, her voice sharp and commanding. The trials are nearing their end, humans. Soon you will give your answer, and that answer will shape the bond between your kind and mine. John met her gaze, his heart pounding, but this time he did not feel like a prisoner. This time, he felt like a man holding a secret weapon, for he now knew the truth, and the truth was power. The grand hall was filled with light. Crystal pillars blazed like fire, and the chants of thousands of aliens shook the air. John stood at the center, his heart pounding, his body surrounded by glowing guards. Above him, the Queen watched from her throne, her silver eyes burning like twin suns. This was the final ceremony. The trials had ended. The suitors had shown their strength, their beauty, their devotion, and now, all of them stood in a circle waiting for his decision. Each one's gaze clung to him like chains, hungry, desperate, demanding. The human will choose, the Queen declared, her voice thundering across the hall. His choice will bind his fate to ours. His choice will seal the future of this season. Step forward, human, and speak. John's chest tightened. The woman's warning echoed in his mind. They do not seek love, only chains. He looked around at the nobles with their painted faces, at the warriors who had shattered stone, at the singers whose voices twisted hearts. They all wanted him not for who he was, but for what he carried. They wanted his blood, his humanity, his very existence. And then, at the edge of the hall, he saw her, the outcast in the dark robes, standing half hidden in the shadows. Her eyes locked on his, steady, calm, unbroken. She had risked everything to tell him the truth. And now in her silent gaze he saw the question burning. What would he do? The Queen raised her staff, impatience flickering across her face. Speak, human, who among us do you claim? The crowd leaned forward, breaths held, the air trembling with expectation. John felt the weight of two worlds pressing on him. If he chose one of them, Earth might be spared. But he would be shackled forever if he refused. Earth could be destroyed in their hunger. Either way, the choice was a battlefield. He took a deep breath, his voice cutting into the silence. "My choice," he said slowly, each word heavy. "Is none of you!" Gasps tore through the hall. Cries of outrage exploded, the nobles shouting in fury. The queen's silver eyes narrowed into blades. "You dare defy the ritual?" she hissed, her voice like venom. John stepped forward, his body trembling but his voice steady. "I am not your prize, I am not your cure, I am human. And we are not yours to claim." The hall erupted into chaos. Some screamed for his death. Others demanded punishment. The queen rose, her staff glowing with dangerous light. "Then you condemn your world," she spat. "Your people will pay for your defiance." But John stood taller. His eyes locked on hers. "No," he said firmly. "You think you hold power over me, but it's the other way around. Because you need me, you need what I carry. And if you destroy Earth, you destroy the only hope you have left." His words struck like thunder. Silencing the hall, the nobles stared at him with wide eyes, the truth dawning heavy on their faces. The queen froze, her staff trembling in her grip, her fury battling with the fear of losing what her people desperately needed. From the shadows, the woman in dark robes stepped forward, her voice clear. "He has spoken truth. We have bound ourselves in chains of ritual and greed. But he holds the power to break us or save us, not through desire, not through force, but through choice freely given." Her words rolled through the hall like fire, burning away the false glamour of the ritual. The nobles fell silent, their painted faces pale. The queen's lips tightened, rage flashing in her eyes, but she did not strike, because even she knew the truth. Without him, they had nothing. John turned slowly, his voice echoing across the chamber. "I will not choose a suitor. I will choose only one path. Respect my people, respect my kind, or you will have nothing." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. The nobles bowed their heads in reluctant submission. Even the queen's shoulders sagged under the weight of his defiance. For the first time, John saw fear in her eyes, not fear of war, but fear of losing everything. He stepped down from the platform, his gaze finding the woman in dark robes. She bowed her head slightly, a small smile touching her lips. And in that moment, John knew the war was not over. But the chains had been broken, for he had turned their ritual into rebellion. And his choice, his refusal, had changed the balance between two species forever. The drums stopped, the lights dimmed, and the hall fell into silence. And though the future was uncertain, one truth burned clear in John's heart. Humanity would never be anyone's prize.